So our third speaker today is Josh Dallin. He is with the Utah State University Extension, and he's going to be talking about using technology to our advantage in the lamb or kid barn. I'll let you get started.
Thank you. And it's been a wonderful pleasure to be able to listen to the previous speakers and all of their knowledge. And I appreciate the opportunity to be invited. Well, I was really excited to be asked to talk to everyone about this today because this is something that I personally have implemented into our sheep operation. And it really has made a giant difference in the way that we've been able to operate. And hopefully some of the things that we talk about today will be of benefit to you, and you can maybe spark a little bit of interest in maybe trying this out for yourselves if you haven't already. So I come from generations of sheep producers. Our claim to fame is my great great grandfather was in an adjacent canyon to where they finally trapped and caught the famous grizzly bear, Old Ephraim. He was running his band of sheep up there. And so sheep production has been a big deal for us for a long time. We have, over the generations, have scaled down quite a bit to where we're more of a small farm flock producer system right now. But I think that this stuff can be very beneficial to all aspects of production, whether it's small flock or even some of our commercials that might be doing more of a shed lambing type of a technique. Well, we're going to go ahead and dive right into this. We're going to talk about some of those traditions. So I don't know about many of you, but this is generally how I feel during lambing season here in Utah. In our small farm flocks, or we have a lot of our producers that like to start, whether they're raising club lambs or maybe they just have indoor facilities, they're able to lamb a little bit earlier than maybe some of our commercial outfits do. We'll start lambing at the end of December all the way until about now. So some of the things I wrote down previous to maybe implementing technology as far as traditions is getting up every 2 or so hours, getting dressed, heading out into the cold. For me, I live about 2 miles, a mile and a half, 2 miles away from the lamb barn. And so I would have to get into the cold truck, start it up, wait for it to get going, head down to the barn. Once I got down there, I'd walk across the cold field, get into the barn, and figure out what was going on in there. Now, most of the time, things were either just fine or there was nothing going on. And so at that point, I would turn back around and I'd walk across the cold field and I'd get into the cold truck and I'd drive back home. And then I'd go and I would lay down and I would be tired, but I was awake. I'd been up, I'd been moving. And so that's kind of the traditional way that I would check lambs. And I would appreciate if anybody else had that same type of experience. If you want to maybe share with some of the participants in the group chat there about what it is that your traditions look like as far as lambing are concerned. But one of the things that really got scary for me is because of these traditions and because of the many times that I would go through that rigmarole and I'd walk out to the barn and find that really nothing was going on or that everything was okay, I would find that I would have the alarm clock go off and I would be able to convince myself that I didn't need to go out, that I didn't need to check, that things would be just fine. And then those tended to be the times when I really probably should have went out. I'd go out later on to find some problems or some issues, things that could have been preventative, going along with some of the presentations that have been given earlier, had I have been there in a more timely manner. Looks like we got some comments in here. Exactly how we just explained. Exactly. All right, good. Yep. All right, you driving a Kubota. There you go. No sense going to bed, sleep in the chair. Can't tell you how many times I've fallen asleep on a straw bale out there because that's just where exhaustion has led me. So I agree. I appreciate those comments coming in. So the question that we have to ask ourselves then is, why cameras? Why would we institute this type of technology? And I kind of wanted to go through and talk to you a little bit about the why, and then we'll go and we'll talk a little bit about maybe asking ourselves some questions as to what might fit best for your type of operation, and then maybe give you some ideas and some tidbits as to what maybe might work best for the installation process. So here's one of my biggest whys personally. And it comes in the form of more success, financial profitability. So I cannot even count on my fingers and toes how many times just this lambing season, having a camera and accessibility to view what was going on has saved multiple lambs. Whether it be viewing that a ewe has dystocia, whether it be viewing that a lamb just can't seem to quite get up, whether it be viewing that one of the other mothers that really didn't want to be motherly to the newborn that was there took it and knocked it and threw it into the water trough, and the poor thing was standing up in the water up to its umbilical. Real life story, right? And I was able to view those on the camera and be able to see that there was a problem and that I needed to find a solution to be able to solve that problem. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. Number two, sorry, I'm trying to read the chats here as you guys are coming in and try and keep that interactive. I appreciate your guys' comments about buying extra clothes and doing those types of things. I understand going out there and checking all the time. It is laborious. So that leads into this next point here is it's less work. Okay, it reduces the amount of labor. One of the things that we used to do before the cameras is we had a couple of neighbor kids that would get home from school, and we would employ them to go down and check on what was going on at the barn, because we work. Both my wife and I, we have jobs, and we do the farm as a side hustle and as a side job. And so for us, we can't be there 24/7. And so what we would do is we would ask the neighbor kids to walk in. We ended up having to pay them some money. And then oftentimes, if there was a problem that wasn't an easy fix, we were on the phone trying to talk the neighbors through how to help those sheep. And so with these cameras, we've been able to significantly reduce the amount of labor. And it really has helped us to know when we need to call on somebody if there's a problem that really does arise. So we talked about sleep being important. Sleep is more than just having the energy to do things. It's having the mental ability to make crucial decisions, to be able to remember the things that we learned about dystocia and about those neonatal care techniques that are needed. And so we can not panic, and we can focus, and we can do the things that we need to when it's needed. And again, there's a lot of us that are on here that have sheep as a hobby, right? And we need to be able to focus on the other things that sustain us throughout the day. And so those things are very important, and sleep is so important. And for me personally, with this technology, it's allowed me, instead of doing the rigmarole that we talked about and getting up and being cold and being moving and then not wanting to go back to sleep, a quick rollover on the bed and checking and viewing the videos and seeing that, yes, I do need to get up, or no, I'm fine, and quickly rolling back over has helped me immensely to be able to have the energy and the focus and the things that I need to be able to be a better sheep farmer and a better husband and a better dad, as well as a better employee. One of the things that I have really loved, and this is another point here, is we allow our sheep to have their more natural animal behavior. I don't know how many times before I had these cameras, I would go out there and I could see that one of the ewes was getting ready to lamb, and I'd get excited and I'd stand around, or I'd go outside and pretend like she didn't know that I was there, and I would really prolong her actual delivery of her lambs. And now, with this camera system, you're able to watch and be away, but be there. and allow them to go through that natural process without that added stress. The other thing that's been really interesting that I wanted to note about this natural behavior is it's so interesting to watch how those sheep react and act when you're not there, whether it be when they are giving birth. It's so interesting through that parturition to see the differences in how each one of them delivers their own lambs. There's so many different ways that they do that, and having this camera system has been phenomenal for me to be able to observe the differences and their individuality when it comes to parturition. The other thing that's really interesting is to watch them how they interact with one another, how they sleep, and what a real comfortable pregnant sheep looks like. I mean, some of them they get zonked out at night, and it's just interesting when you're checking on them from a camera system to see what their natural behavior really looks like, and to realize how much added stress sometimes just our presence brings to them in the lamb barn. So now I want to rely on some questions that the Ohio State Sheep team actually wrote. These were probably some of the best that I could find in reference to what do you want for your operation. And so I think if you ask yourself these types of questions, I think that it's going to help you to understand and pinpoint a little bit more as to what it is that you would like for your operation and what would benefit you. So the first question is, do I want to see it on my phone remotely, or is just having it in the house good enough? Okay, and we're going to go through some more detail in this as far as this question is concerned as we talk about the different types of cameras and things later on. So I'm going to keep moving on as far as that question is concerned. Do I have good internet availability to my barn? Okay, question number 2 actually helps to answer question number 1. If you don't have good internet availability, it's going to make it really difficult for you to be able to do a remote type of a camera. Okay. Number 3, do I need to record, or is live stream enough? You know, this is a really, really important question to ask yourselves. Oftentimes, unless you are worried about security, or unless you're really wanting to be able to go backwards and see how long a ewe maybe has been in labor, those are the things that might require a recording. Most of the time, for me personally, and for those that I've spoke with, the camera is acting more as a real-time availability for you to check on those ewes without having to displace yourself. And so, you know, recording is an option, but sometimes the recording comes with extra fees and extra things because you're going to be paying somebody, unless you're doing it on a DVR of your own, you're going to be paying a company to store that data, and that could become a little extra cost to the operation. However, if that's something that's of importance to you, it's definitely an availability. The next question is do I want audio? One person asked me this. I asked them when we were talking about cameras. I said, you know, hey, can you talk to them? Can you hear them? And he kind of looked at me funny. He says, well, why do I want to talk to my sheep? And one of the things that I have found is a benefit to audio, and I explained it to him. I said, hey, I'm not getting on there and singing them lullabies or anything at night. But if I can't see them at a certain angle, maybe I've got a ewe that's standing in front of another ewe that I think might have dystocia, or I just can't quite figure out what's going on. Some of these cameras actually have an option for you to talk through them. So I can get on there and I can say, ha, sheep, ha, or I can do something like that. And it actually will cause them to get up and move or displace themselves a little bit and move around so that I don't have to worry about that, not being able to see the angles that I want to see. The other thing oppositely is I can actually listen through the camera. Sometimes a ewe will just be in discomfort and be moving around, and video wise, it might look like perhaps she's actually giving birth or trying to, maybe having some difficulties, but in reality, she's just moving around. Having the sound option is oftentimes a really good thing because you can hear those noises that they're making and see if in fact they are having some trouble or trying to deliver, or calling for their lambs, whatever it might be. Those are some good options when it comes to audio. What groups of sheep do I want to see? And this may sound like a silly question because we've talked about really focusing in on those that are close up in our pens for lambing. However, sometimes we might want to be able to have a view on our jugs or our jails and see maybe what's going on there. Maybe have a better idea on, as was mentioned before, some of those ewes that maybe don't want to mother up quite as good. We might be able to take a look in their more natural environment to see if they're actually letting those lambs suckle. This would just require either a different type of a camera or multiple cameras to be able to view all the different angles that you'd want to see. Okay, the next thing is, are there solid walls in the viewing area that you need to think about? And for our barn particularly, we actually have our drop pen that's in an L shape, and that L shape makes it more difficult. So we can't really see. We can only see straight view on one, and so we actually ended up getting a second camera so we could see the other angle. But again, that's another question to think about because that's going to determine what types and how many different types of cameras you might need. Okay. So I did notice here in the chat that we had somebody that gave a good recommendation of some excellent camera systems. It looks like Joanna did that, and I really appreciate that, Joanna. One of the things that I did when I was searching for my own cameras, I started doing some searches, and I found out that there's about 800,000 different options in the search in Google of cameras. There's just a bajillion different cameras that you can work with. The bottom line is you just need to make sure that you find whatever seems to want to work best for you. And so, there's some that are extremely expensive. There's some like the ones that I'm going to show you a picture on. In fact, the picture that you can see right here, this is a night vision. So this looks like it was almost 11 o'clock at night. You can actually see this ewe right here. You've got the feet and the head coming out of this lamb. She's giving birth right there in the corner. And that's a night vision, again, type of a look there. And that camera was $39.99 is all. And so you can see that you don't necessarily have to go super expensive, but maybe if you have a larger lambing barn or a larger drop pen, maybe there's going to be, some depth issues that you're going to want to focus on. And that comes down into these must-have sections. Infrared lights, I think, are very important. Even with lights in the barn, when it comes dark at night, it's really nice to have those in the cameras, and most of them have them already included with the type of cameras that you're looking for. The depth and length of the focus of field, again, is really important. So you may need to spend just a little bit more money to cover the area that you're looking to be able to focus on. And then you need to make sure that you have enough cameras to accomplish your goal. So for us, we have 3 cameras that we've utilized. We actually have a lockup pen, drop pin that we will lock the ewes up into at night so that we can make sure that if lambs are born, they're born into a warmer environment. But just to be able to air things out and to kind of mitigate, as was mentioned earlier in a presentation, the heat and the wet and the possibility of causing more problems than maybe what we'd like, we often will open up those doors and allow the ewes to go out into another additional pen that's adjacent to the barn to kind of allow them to get out and exercise a little bit, and then also to keep down on the overall discharge that happens in the barn. Okay, so we're going to move on to talk a little bit about the different styles that you can look at today that might interest you. The one that we're utilizing is the wireless Wi-Fi one. These are wireless Wi-Fi's have availability through different phone apps. These are the ones like the first question that was asked in that question about what kind of a camera do you want. These come along generally with an app, and generally the apps are free. Where you start to pay for money is when you're going to want to keep the data and be able to go back and rewatch and do different things. The cool thing about these wireless Wi-Fi's is, again, they're very affordable. You can get them for anywhere from $40 up to a couple $100. You can access them through your phone. Again, you can utilize your phone to take pictures. In fact, all the pictures that are of the sheep, whether it's in the daylight or not, that was just me opening up my app and it saving it to my photo reel. These cameras are able to produce really good high quality video and sound. And we talked about that sound both ways. So that's just an option for you to think about as far as that is concerned. Now, again, we cannot have this type of a system without having that wireless Wi-Fi capability. And so that's just something to keep into consideration. And we'll talk a little bit about some tricks to be able to make that a little bit more accessible in just a second on the next slide. We have our hardwired DVR systems. Again, this does still require internet because you're going to have these wires that come into this DVR system. It's going to go onto a monitor. And then if you want that transferred farther away, you either need to have a long enough cable to be able to make that happen, or you're going to have some sort of Wi-Fi capabilities to talk to that DVR system to be able to get that to connect to a device, whether that be in your home or on your phone. This one kind of just takes in it has an extra step as far as the wiring is concerned before you're able to view it versus the camera that goes immediately through the Wi-Fi right to your screen. Lastly, this is just a recommendation that was given in some of the research from Ohio State. They said that sometimes if you have a smaller operation, you can actually purchase one of these baby monitors. They said that in the research that it's up to 1,000 feet that they can actually reach. But this would be one that you might not be able to access it anywhere at any point. This would be one that you'd have set up in your house, have the monitor out in the barn, and you could check it just to save yourself a trip if needs be. Okay, as far as installation is concerned, we talked about, does your barn have a sufficient enough Wi-Fi? One of the easiest ways to do that, to test for that, is to take your phone, turn it on the Wi-Fi settings, and be able to walk out into the area where your barn is, and make sure to walk inside your barn and move around, because sometimes Wi-Fi can be inhibited by metal roofs. It can be inhibited by walls. There's all sorts of things that can stop the Wi-Fi from working. And so make sure to take your phone out there, hook it up to the Wi-Fi, and test your abilities. One of the best testers for me is just to pull up a YouTube video, because you're going to want to be watching video and live stream of what's going on. Make sure the YouTube video is going to work with the Wi-Fi that you're connected to. Your barn, in the case for us, may be quite a ways away from the house. And so one of the recommendations is to buy a Wi-Fi extender. The Wi-Fi extender actually was the most expensive thing out of our setup that we bought. Again, the cameras that we bought, we got on Amazon for $39. The extender was $139. However, the extender is what made it possible for them to work. And so the extender just sits outside on the fence. It connects to the Wi-Fi router inside the house, and then it transmits the Wi-Fi, amplifies it out there to the barn. And again, that's a really good solution for many of us that have that barn positioned somewhere. We also can move that extender around to be able to get the best shot of Wi-Fi out there to the barn, and it works really, really good. One recommendation when you're setting these cameras up, set them up and make sure they're working before you screw them up into the rafters of the barn or wherever you're going to put them. They generally will work, but you just want to make sure that everything's working properly, because it's a pain. I've learned from experience when one decides not to work how you want it to, and you have to get up there and take it down and try and figure out what's going on. It's a whole lot easier if you get them all ready to go before you do that installation. Lastly, make sure that you have good enough power sources in your barn to be able to cover the outlets that are needed and the power sources for these cameras to be plugged in. We talked about this hardwired DVR. Again, very, very accurate, very good source for viewing, just depending upon your setup. You are going to make sure that you have sufficient enough cables and length of cables to be able to control the cameras and be able to view what you would like to see. You're also going to have to make sure, if you're trying to get an internet connection from that DVR box, that you have a strong enough signal to transmit that source. So I just wanted to finish up by giving you some examples from our farm, just from our cameras. And I know there's a ton that are out there, but just give you a little taste about the difference that maybe an infrared light does, and viewing, and maybe share a couple of quick stories with you as far as what the difference has been on our place. So originally, the reason why I told you maybe think about the different angles and places that you'd like to put cameras, we bought two and we put them in the barn. And then I realized it doesn't do me any good to have cameras if I'm turning the sheep out outside in the day and I can't see them. And so we installed this third camera. This was actually one that I had to wait a week for it to get to me. But as you can see, a night and a day difference here. This is actually a fairly decent sized pen. And again, we use marking harnesses, so we lock our ewes up according to their bred cycles, and you can see here that actually per the nighttime, this was at almost 11 o'clock at night. It looks like here on the right, we can see pretty dang good. There's no other additional lights that are out there. It was if I would have tried to take a picture with my phone, you would have seen just black screen. So that infrared light works really good there for me to be able to tell what's going on. And then again, during the day, we'll have some of our younger ewes that instead of wanting to go in on the nice straw, they'll come out here and want a lamb, and we can see that we might need to have somebody go and help them, or that we need to get down there to get those lambs jugged up and taken care of properly. Convenience. We want to talk about convenience. Dr. Page was actually with me when this was happening. We were at the USU shearing school. This was a yearling ewe that we ended up naming Mildred. You can see that she's going through that parturition process right here. I got kind of concerned about her, watching her, and then lo and behold, she was able to have this lamb on her own, not a problem. The lamb was up. We could hear her talking to it, and she was able to go in and start. We watched the lamb nurse and allowed us to be able to relax just a bit. Again, I was about a 45-minute drive away from the barn at that time, but I was able to see that everything was okay from that point. This is just a different view showing you that we did need that extra camera because of the corner view, and actually our ewes have tended to want to go up into this corner and lamb. You can see these couple of lambs that we have here being able to view that they're up. This lamb right here, we're actually going to see in a video here towards the end, and you're going to be able to watch him interacting with his mom and seeing that he's doing pretty good and maybe doesn't need our immediate attention. So I'm going to try and play this for you and show you what these cameras can do. This is actually just me pressing the record button on my phone, and it just saved it to my video. But enjoy this. Hopefully you can hear it. So again, that sound feature for me is a big one, because I can hear that she's mothering up to that baby, and I can hear that that she's licking on it. I can just audibly be able to tell that mom's doing her job and that things are okay. Visually, I can see the lamb is up and going there to get a drink. I would like to just acknowledge the Ohio State Sheep Team and Farmer's Eye on some really cool information that was given as far as some pointers in this presentation, and then would field any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate the presentation. Your one question that you have is, wouldn't a mesh network such as Eero be better than a range extender?
Sorry, I was muted. I think it just depends. I think that both of those are good options. I think it just depends on the length of the shot of where you're at with the barn. But the mesh extenders for the Wi-Fi deals, I think I just think it's a personal preference thing. And to be honest, I wouldn't dare tell you that I'm a technological expert. I'm better off in the sheep barn, but I think you definitely could. Definitely could do that. The biggest point is getting that strongest signal possible out to the barn so that those cameras are working real time for you.
Okay, great.